Guess what? Episode 10 of the Salt and Orange podcast. My name's Luke,
And I was not prepared for that intro. I'm mad.
and
What's up?
that's Matthew. So, this is really big occasion. Number 10, the big 1-0. We're just super excited. Um, we have some good viewership so far, and we're excited to just do this every week, that we get to record.
Yeah.
We've got some things down the line that we are trying to plan, maybe for some episodes. So, if you guys have any ideas, hit us up in the comment section. But today we are going to talk about youth ministry.
Mm,
Um, this was my idea. I know Matthew's big in youth ministry,
yeah.
but I'm getting ready to apply for a youth ministry job. So I thought it'd be cool to start, talking about like, you know, where we came from in our youth experience and
Mm,
what we see youth ministry looking like.
yeah.
So,
So hiring committee, whoever's because you're obviously watching this episode, make sure you hire Luke. That's great. Thanks.
so, um, what are some of the, like? Did you do a youth group when you were a kid, Matthew? Like, was that a thing?
Yeah, we kind of had. hmm, yeah, a lot of it runs together because I did choir too when I was a kid in
Mm-hmm.
church. So we had our youth choir. So a lot of like the same people were. I think everybody, all the youth were in it. Like you didn't really. I mean, I guess you had a choice, but you didn't really have a choice. So a lot of the things I remember as a youth in the church was like going places to sing, which was
Mm-hmm.
kind of cool. You got to go to a different church, kind of see what other things were out there. Like sometimes there's these really tiny like one room churches that was cool to see when I grew up in it was a pretty sizable church. It's not like a massive church, but like you probably could fit like 300, 400 people in there.
I
So
like my
that
church.
that was interesting. Yeah. We also did like every summer we would go like kayaking.
Oh, that's
So like
cool.
there was a like rapids nearby. So we drove like 30, 40 minutes, got to some rapids, and that was the day. Like we spent the day out in nature. People brought their kayaks, people brought fishing poles, they fished, and you just were out in nature. It was a lot of fun. And like I remember my mom, who has watched an episode of this. So fun story about my mom. We went, and my brother and I were in a canoe with her. It's my first time, and they won't let you do a kayak by yourself the first time. So I was with them. We were going down the rapids. My brother and I started like splashing each other with paddles, and one of us reached too far, and we flipped the canoe over. My mom does not swim, so we had a very fun time. We had a bunch of food and stuff. We had probably like 6 or 7 bottles of water that are still probably in that river because we never like we picked up one or two. It was a good time. I had a fun time. I really liked doing that. I think it really built my connection towards like experiencing God in nature. So I was
Mm-hmm.
had made a great time with that.
Yeah, I had the same kind of. I mean, we didn't do like any trips. We did a lot of trips, but we never went kayaking. But I had the same kind of experience where like we had a youth choir and a youth, just a youth group. But I mean, basically they were the same people. So anytime I'm talking about like things I did in youth,
Yeah.
I'm really talking about that whole time span, like of youth choir and youth, because I mean I consider them the same thing.
Right.
And we called our group like Red Tape. That was really before my time, but I was kind of on the back end of that before our youth group kind of like trickled away because that's just how youth groups happen sometimes because you lose a big portion of people from graduating and stuff, and then if you don't grow it, like our youth person did not grow it like they should have, so it kind of
Mm.
fell off. But some of the good memories I had is this was before I even got in youth group. I never went paintballing before. Like went and played paintball,
Right.
and I was like maybe like in fourth or fifth grade, and my dad was like, "Hey, the youth's gonna go play paintball. You want to go?" And I'm like, "Oh, heck yeah!" I'm like, "God, this is something I've never done before." And so I went, and I was so scared, like I was like shivering, and I just remember that I thought the gun couldn't shoot more than one at a time, and it had this little like handle on the side, and I thought I had
Mm-hmm.
to like pull the trigger and then pull the little handle, but really I could have just held down the trigger and shot it as many times as I want. But I just remember I I wasn't even shooting at anyone. Like I was literally just shooting them up in the air. But I was enjoying it so much. And so like I just remember like my fondest memories of our times with those people. I had some really good friends that didn't go to my school that were in my youth group, and so I got to meet those people that were, outside of my school zone,
Mm-hmm.
and so I think I found a better community of people when you were in that youth group setting. Um, I'd say my thing that I love about youth group now, like being able to be with youth and being able to talk with youth, is I like that we can give you know because I felt like I was given, but I feel like we can also give people or youth a place to really connect with God
Mm-hmm.
and not be afraid. And not that I'm saying they got to change the way they think, but they can start having questions, and those questions aren't immediately shot back down because they don't. They say that you're not allowed to have questions and stuff like that. So I would say like some of my great memories are just times when I had great change. I remember we went to a concert one time, and I had never been to like a contemporary Christian concert. That was like the first time I'd ever went to something like that. And we like I held my hands up for the first time. Like I don't do that now. I'm not a hand holder, thing. Like holding it up in the air. But like I tried it then and I was like, wow, that was something like I actually got to try and people were not like being like, why are you doing that? Like they were just
Right.
like, hey, you can try it. It's something you can try. That's why, and I've said this in previous episodes, like go to different churches, like try stuff out. Because if you don't get that space where you can try stuff out, you won't find out what your core beliefs are. And so I guess that's the reason I love youth is because like that's when they start changing everything up in their mind. When you're a kid,
Mm-hmm.
you get ingrained with all this, Bible knowledge and all this these other, moral stuff. But then when you become a youth, I feel like you are at the point where you can say, okay, what do I really believe? I got all the facts, or sometimes you don't have all the facts because, you know, me and you we're both in our 20s and we still don't have all the facts. But you can start to think that you have a grasp on your faith, as I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so that's when you can start to make those decisions in your life. And I think that's why we need to focus so much on youth ministry because that's where you either lose a Christian or gain a Christian. And that's a
Mm-hmm.
big statement right there. I think you lose a Christian or gain a Christian, but I don't think you lose them forever because we've talked about this before. A lot of people lose their faith when they're like, you know, 16 to 19, and then guess when they come back when they're like 30 or 40 because they're like, oh man, my kid's gonna need what I got when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And so like, but what I want to stop is I want to stop that, you know 16 to 19. I want to be there and be like, hey, this is important. This isn't something you just come back when you're 30 or 40 and decide you want to follow.
Right.
you know
Yeah, I see it a lot with like youth groups, and it's kind of interesting that you started out with like, oh, what fun memories do you have? What do you remember? And we're talking about these things that aren't like I remember this time when we learned a story about Daniel and the lion's den. Like we're not saying those kinds of things. We're like, oh, I remember when I went paintballing or like when I went to this concert. Like we have done that so much in youth ministry, and I'm like I've studied this a lot, and I really feel like that's you're right. That space is so important because if you're talking about youth, which I would consider like 13 to like total early 20s, that would be
Mm-hmm.
like the youth age, where you're really like questioning what your religion is, right? You brought up a good point. We kind of raised our parents, or church raises us to a point. But when we get to a certain age where we start questioning, like confirmation age, right? And that's a really big place to walk with youth who are struggling with their faith. That's the best word to say is struggle. Like there's no, it's not like uncertainty, it's not questioning, it's struggling with your faith. Like we all have to be like, Jacob a little bit and struggle with God, like kind of figure out who we really are. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and that sets us up for the future. I liked your point about coming back when you're like 30 or 40 because you want your kids to have the same experience you did. So my question to people who think like that is why was it so important that you have to let your kids experience it, but you didn't follow through with your faith until you got
Exactly.
kids again? Why did that happen? Where's that disconnect? So I want to figure out that space and see how we can change that because we can't just wait for the next generation to show up. Like we can't wait for the next set of kids. Okay, well we have kids, but we gotta wait, 20 years until they have kids because that's getting pushed off later and later now. Like people aren't having kids till they're 30. It's not like kids are popping up at like early 20s anymore, so it's not as
Uh,
fast. So your program starts dwindling a bit, right? And we start seeing this loss. Um, but that's the other thing. Like I think a lot of youth programs kind of were built on the legacy aspect, where
mm-hmm.
you have parents, they stay in the church, their kids then become members of the church through like confirmation and youth groups kind of stuff. Then their kids and so you just keep doing that cycle, whereas we're not really enticing anyone else. We
Mm-hmm.
might entice other people outside of that group to come in, but it's really hard for us to grab those people. And I think that's where we need to start thinking about youth ministry is what does it look like around the people who are not currently here and the families that are not currently here. Like we can't rely on some 86-year-old to bring their grandchildren to be our youth group. We have to have people who want to be there because we have something to offer them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's exactly like what some of the churches where I live they're struggling with. That is, I mean, we talked about a couple episodes ago. We talked about hospitality, and I think in youth group that's where we're missing our hospitality. But I think we are. I don't think the church understands how to um, get those people interested in church, because we don't know what they like yet. We're
Mm,
so ingested with ourselves, we don't know what they like yet.
right.
Um, I mean, I wouldn't even say it's because we have a lot of older people in church. It's not that. It's just I think we try to separate ourselves so much from reality or like, the world that we don't realize that we have to, you know, still get people out of that world. But, I'm not I wouldn't say like that, but probably like we have to still get people from there. I mean, there's got to be some way to entice them because, um, people aren't just going to walk in and, it's not like Jesus' time where people want to hear him speak.
Right.
Um, and so I think that's where people need to try to figure out some like techniques to try to get people to come and stuff like that. My biggest thing is I think that you doing a week long trip is a huge thing for a kid. Because it gets them away from their parents and it gets them in a headspace where they can just think by themselves. I know you probably think completely different, but um, I think it's huge because um, I think a lot of kids get stuck under their parents, what they need to believe, and then when they get older, they're like they finally get out of that. They finally get to move out of their house. They finally get away from their parents, and then they're like, "Well, why do I even do this Christianity thing now? I don't need to do it." Um, and so I can say like, if you take them on a trip for like a week, and then that's your high note. You know what I'm saying? So like that's your high note. That's where you're saying this is what, you know, this is I'm not going to say it's the best that God could bring you, but it's like this is where you are going to be the closest to God. And so then what you do is you ride that high note. Um by ride it you say, "Okay, come back next week at our home church." And you say, "Okay, let's keep going. Let's keep going. Let's keep learning. Let's keep doing that." But you have to entice them with that first like high impact moment.
Mhm.
Cuz I've seen so many people that have went on trips like that and then they've come back and then been like super like into being at youth group because they got to, make those friendships, make those connections. And then they got to make a connection with God cuz they got to hear like either speakers or they got to see how people react with each other. Because I think sometimes it can be scary to just say, "Hey, come to youth group," because like they're like, "Well, that's there's nothing special about that. You're just coming, coming to have like a night worship or whatever your youth group would consist of." I know when we did youth group, it was like one person would speak, and then we would play games and stuff like that, and then another person would speak, and we maybe sing one song, and then we go home. And I was, that's not the most exciting thing ever. But really, the reason you have youth group is to have that family or that community. I mean, that's the whole reason we have church too. So, um, I think if you really want to get people enticed, you have to have those kinds of trips and stuff like that.
Mm. I don't know if it's like trips and stuff like that. I'm sure those like are helpful. I don't. I think back and I'm like, yeah, there's a few times that I was away, but I think I was at the point where I was already forming my faith, so it didn't really help me in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's more. I wouldn't say it's more important, but to me, it felt more important that I felt like I had a space in my home church that I could kind
Mm-hmm.
of like figure out what I believed and what I needed to learn. And also like having adult mentors, and my parents were open to like letting me explore different things and figuring out, okay, well, why is this happening? Why do we believe this? They were like, they didn't shut down my questions. I feel like that's really the important part. You mentioned community. I like that too. I like that a lot because you want to give them a space that feel like they're in the community, not just in a community of youth, but actually a part of the community of the whole church, right? That's the real part. We need to be authentic
See,
and allow them to be a part of the church.
but right now, probably the hardest thing for youth right now is, when we grew up, I mean, it wasn't as big, but there's a lot of like single parent households or like split households, you know what I'm saying? So like a lot of those people don't have that kind of adult. So like it's relying more and more on that youth leader or that person in your church to step up and be like, "Hey, I got to be almost like a father or mother to you," because and I'm not saying you got to raise them, but to be there as like the person who you can ask questions to.
Right.
And because I was taking a class one time and they were like, probably the hardest question you'll ever get asked is you'll say, "Well, why do my mommy and daddy don't think the same way as, this?" Or why do my mommy and dad, if God's so good, then why are my mommy and daddy not together? And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's like the hardest question to ever like answer in your life. You hope you never have to answer that question. You know what I'm saying? And so I think that is the greatest, challenges for youth group for me. Like as I go into youth ministry, that's going to be like the greatest challenge for me is working with those people that have those, broken families and stuff like that. But I know that's happening more and more as our generation goes, um, which is sad. But that's what's gonna have to be the new norm, as I would say. Um, but
Part of that I think is like, you know, we haven't educated people enough, and that's why these things are happening. Like, I don't know if you've ever read Marriage Vows,
yeah,
but it's like forever till death do us part, not
mhm.
I'm tired of you, do us part, or I'm done with you, do us part. You're making a vow, a commitment. It's a huge thing. And most people treat it as like, it's just, you know, whatever, this is
Well, that's
happening,
a
whatever.
topic for another episode
Yeah,
though, because we
I
can
do
really
think
talk
so.
about that.
Yeah, I do think we can talk about that a bit. But it's how we educate people in their youth is what they take to their adulthood, right? We want to give them the foundation that they can take and then be successful. Like, even if they don't, I mean, this is the thing you don't want to hear me say. But even if they don't come back to our church, as long as we're giving them the foundation in the Christian faith, we are doing our job. Sure,
Exactly. I mean,
our
I
church,
agree the same way.
like our church might die. Okay, but if we've helped somebody find their faith and they're going to be, an advocate for Christ, we've done our job, right? It's not like we have to constantly have a successful youth program. It's not like we have to, be like bringing in hundreds of kids every
Either
year and
way,
watching them graduate and all that stuff. Like, you don't have to have that.
see, the way I look at it is there's churches that are meant for certain age groups. There's churches that are meant for the younger generation. And then there's churches that are meant for the older generation. But there's also churches that are meant for that whole, group, for every generation. But
Mm.
I think now we have churches that are only meant for certain generations. And it's just because that's just how things have worked now. I mean, because some people are just so stubborn that they will not change their ways. And I'm not saying like you got to change what you believe, but like, um, you can start to like accept. And this is we were gonna make an episode about this, and I really want to still. But on like contemporary versus like traditional music, like you can do a mix. It's not that hard. My
Yeah.
dad does it every Sunday. Um, And I'm not saying that you have to like play one contemporary song and play one traditional song. You can, and this is like the music person inside me, you can mix songs together. I mean, literally, they wrote Amazing Grace as a contemporary Christian song, and it
Yep.
has, the newer version. I'm like, it's so easy to make, like, to blend it. I don't know why people, like, I don't, I mean, I don't think it's such an argument anymore, but I think some people still do argue about, like,
It's
oh,
definitely
I
still an
still like
argument.
my traditional hymn. I like my traditional hymns. And I mean, I do too. I like hymns. I love
Yeah.
singing hymns. But I also like contemporary music too. But that's because I like a blend. I like
Right.
both. And so I think that to get youth into your church, you got to be able to blend
Mm.
because the youth like the new contemporary music. I hate Christian rap, but the new youth like Christian rap. I think it's terrible. But there's some people who really like it. And so I think you just got to learn to accept these different like I'm not saying you got to change the way you think, but you got to learn to like accept, different types of music because that's an easy thing you can change that won't affect your personal beliefs that much. Like, oh well, I don't get to sing hymns just as, the whole service. Oh well. I mean, that's the way I believe. I believe that I would rather give that up than have to give something super serious about my faith up.
Mm. Yeah. I would like to pull into our scripture element for this video so
Oh
your mom
man.
is happy. Um, if we look at Jesus when he's doing his ministry, it's never he's asking people to come to him. He's always going out. Like, he's constantly moving out to go to find people. It's like he's meeting them where they are. Like that's what we need to be doing too. Not to get too preachy, but you know,
I think I did a
if
sermon on that scripture. So
yeah, yeah. So like you need to
yeah,
tie into what people want because the way you get people to come to your church is you build a connection with them. Like I don't know about you, but I'm an introvert, and so like if you would say, hey, go to this thing that's gonna have, depending on the size of your church, this is gonna have like 40 to 50, maybe 100, 200 people there. Go to this thing that you don't know anybody and worship. I'm like, nope, I'm out. I'm gonna worship online. Thanks. Um, but if you make a connection with somebody, it's like, hey, we're good friends. You want to come to my church service one Sunday and see what it's like? Down. I'm down. I'm there. Say less. We
so
really have to build those connections.
let me talk about my
Sure.
newfound love for pickleball.
Oh, jeez. Go for it.
So I have a found love for pickleball, and I'm trying to build upon what you just said. So our church, we don't even make this like a church affiliated thing, but they do it at our church.
Right.
They play pickleball at our 2 days a week. Well,
Yeah.
guess what? You're getting them to come up to the building. You're getting them to come in the building. You're getting them to talk with church people there. I think you're doing your job correctly. I mean, we don't have to, and this is building upon youth group. Your youth group doesn't have to be, preaching straight at them like, if you don't come to youth group, if you don't go to church, you're going to go to hell. No, if you're just welcoming, if I can say it right,
Welcoming. There you go.
welcoming them in, then that's all you need to do. Because eventually they'll start asking their own questions. Or you'll get that one point where they'll say, "Oh, well, I didn't know about this," and you'll be like, "Well, let me just tell you," and then they'll flip the book open, and then you can say the whole thing to them. That's
Yeah.
why I think we always need to be ready to talk about our faith.
Mm.
Um, I mean, I think that's why we do our podcast here, so that way, if someone ever came up to us and was like, "Hey, what do you think about this?" You'd be like, "Oh, well, here you go. You can watch a video on it, or I can just tell you about it."
Right.
Um, and so like your youth group doesn't have to be, the preach heavy, like, because I know a lot of youth groups I've went to, they've had like a sermon and all that junk, and I was like, you're gonna have kids falling asleep and they don't want to be there. But I still don't think. Now, this is my personal opinion. I still don't think that you should have at least a little bit of like a scripture or something at your youth group. It should not just be, hey, come out and play, basketball for one evening. You can make that on another night.
Mm.
But I strong, you don't have to, any of your church events, they don't have to be church affiliated. They can, now you know what you do if someone like comes in and they're like, acting inappropriate and stuff, like, you can be like, hey, we're at a church, dude. And so like it's, you know youth group is, a lot of people like to think it's dead. Youth ministry is dead, but I think it's just dead because people haven't found any new ways to start it up again.
Mm-hmm.
um, we're still stuck in our old ways. Not that they go bad. There's still some youth groups that are going strong. They're huge, going on the old ways. But I think for these churches that are struggling, you got to start filling out something new. I mean, I've said this before. You got to run a church like a business sometimes. Well, if your sales are down in a business, you got to start changing things up, don't you?
New
So
product.
that's what I think about that.
Yeah. I have like so many thoughts. But I don't know where to even start. But I guess if I have to choose, uh,
It's pickleball, right?
I guess pickleball. Yeah, jumping back to pickleball. Yeah. That ties into the just coming to do youth group to have fun. I don't like that. And you're like, you have to
Hmm.
have some kind of scripture or something. I don't like that. Like, it needs to be, you are taking that time to deeply connect with these youth. And if you're taking it solely to have fun, well, like if you're basically just having fun, like playing games and stuff, you're like, oh wait, hold on, we gotta read our Bible lesson, so we can say we did a Bible lesson tonight, you know? Like I'm trying to throw in these scriptures just so Luke's mom's happy, you know? Like if we're trying to do that, that's not really connecting in the way we need to connect. It's like, all right, this is just an afterthought. It's just kind of just a thing. We're really here to have fun. You want to show them that you're really serious about faith, but you also can have fun when experiencing your faith, right? You can't just, you have to
You gotta
have
show them that
both.
community.
Yeah, you
You
got to
gotta
build
show them
that.
that
Yeah.
community.
Yeah, so that's one of the things. I don't remember my second topic, but your third topic was really what I'm interested in, and that is you have to do something different, right?
Hmm.
How uh I'm pulling out my thesis, my master's thesis for this, because the question I asked in my
Nerd,
master's thesis
nerd.
was like, how many years has it been since you've looked at your youth ministry plan or your youth education plan and had a meeting about it and talked about it? When was the last time it was updated? I don't want to know the answer to some of those churches because I would say it's probably 70s, 50s sometimes.
They probably
You
don't
know,
have a
they
plan.
might not even have a plan. That's what I don't want to hear, right? You're just doing things, right? You have to. It's a level of intentionality to it. Like these are children and youth who are in some of the most influential stages of their life. Like you really can make a difference in their life. But if you're sitting there and you're just like, yeah, we're just having fun, they're gonna be like, oh, church is fun. And they're gonna be like, well, it's a now that I'm an adult and adulting hits you like a Mack truck out of nowhere. And you're like, well, I don't have time to do anything. You're not gonna prioritize coming to church because it was like, ah, it was fun, but I didn't really get anything out of it. If you give them something to get out of it, they will get stuff out of it and they will come back.
Hmm.
That's what
Exactly.
we really need to be looking at. It's like we can't be doing. Oh, my favorite phrase is like you can't do the same thing that you've always done. Like it doesn't work that way. Like I hate my. I have a couple phrases in the church that I absolutely just make me mad, and one of them is "We've always done it that way." It just
Yeah.
makes me so mad. It's like, have you even thought about doing it some other way? Have you even talked to the youth about what they want?
Hmm.
Right? We have to include them in these kinds of things. We gotta get them into the community in ways that is actually not just them showing up. So much of youth ministry that I've seen is babysitting. It's like glorified babysitting, right?
Hmm.
I see it all the time with like children's not children's times, but like when you take children out of service to like go to the other room, you're doing it out of the room. You're playing with stuff, right? You're just hanging out. And then they're like, oh, sermon's over, let's go back. You're not some people don't educate in that time. And like you are taking the children away because the sermon okay, the purpose is the sermon is a higher level of thinking that adults and you know older
It's
youth
usually not a
might be
higher
able to
level
get.
of thinking.
It's not really, but it's that's the idea, right? It's a little bit out of the realm of childhood, so you're not going to really understand it to the best degree. So you're taking the children somewhere else where they can learn, but you have to teach them there too. You can't just be like, well, we want you out of the service because you make too much noise playing with your toy Tonka truck that we can't hear what's going on up front. We're taking you out to make you less of a distraction. That's exclusion from the church. It's
Hmm.
not including them at all. So it's really about what you're doing with the youth to form them, not just care for them. You have to form them.
I can't remember if you said this. Did you say that you said this a couple episodes ago, maybe if I'm remembering right. You think that Sunday school is something that's, that we shouldn't do anymore? Is that or is that something that we should do?
That's a tough question because in some cases I think it's really valuable. In other cases, I feel like it's really worthless. Um,
Cuz
if
I'm
you're
thinking
having,
of like a youth Bible study or not Bible
yeah,
study, Sunday school.
sure, why not? Um,
See,
that's
cuz I think it's
like
useless.
I think it can be helpful because like they're still in an age where they're trying to understand. like what the
Hmm.
scriptures are doing. And if you're really like, okay, what do you think? Like, if you're really getting them to think about what the scriptures are saying and not just reading it, you're teaching them a different interpretation of the Bible that's more than just, surface level. So they're getting into their faith a little bit more. So it can be helpful, and it's good to do that in a safe space. It's like, okay, what do you think? Well, okay, what does somebody else think? That's different. That's you can see multiple perspectives.
See,
But if you're like,
the only way that I think it wouldn't be useless is if you find out what the sermon's about, you start talking about that stuff before in a
mm,
Sunday school setting. So that way, when they go in and they sit in during the sermon, they can get more out of it.
but
Because if you really
Luke,
do think that sermons are, supposed to be a higher level, which that could be a whole nother topic, I don't think they are. I think people have dumbed down sermons for real.
you have to.
Um, but that's another episode.
Yep.
But I think that kids would really get into it if they can be like, "Whoa, well, we talked about that," and I can actually have my own thoughts about it. And then I think another good technique that you could do is like when you have youth group, if you have it Sunday evening, or if you have it, I mean, you could even do it on Wednesday. Um, most people do it on Sunday evening. I've had a couple churches that do it on Wednesday evening, but I always like Sunday evening because then it's one day and they'll all come on one day.
Yep.
But you could do like and this could be quick, so that way it doesn't have to be super long. You could do just like a debrief on the sermon.
Honestly, what you should do every week, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. My
I
thought
mean,
with
that's
what
what
you were
you.
talking about was like, but Luke, that requires coordination. It does, right? It requires you to have a coordination with your pastor, whoever's leading that youth
Hmm.
group. If it's not the pastor, it's like a youth minister or a youth leader or whatever, whoever's doing it, you have to have coordination. And the problem is that takes time. That takes effort. And we're so
Yeah, but
about,
they do
just get it
that
done.
anyways.
Right. You have to take the time to do it. Like I said this thing when I was working in my last church. I said, I looked at our admin, and I looked at her and I said, it's so easy for just me and you to do everything, right? We can get this done in like a day. We start adding people, we start adding days to how long this takes to do. But it's worthwhile, not because we sure we can do it all, but it's worthwhile for them to become a part of what's going on, right?
Exactly.
We can't. I me who likes control. I want to do it
Well,
all,
you're a huge control freak.
right? You know it better than most people. I'm a massive control freak,
I
right?
hate how much you're a control
I
freak.
know.
It kills
So,
me.
like in church settings, that's the one place you can't do that. Like you have to let other people do things because it gives them. They're like, oh, my ministry is I help out with the bulletin. My ministry is I write the lyrics to the music and put them on our projector. My role is I run the sound. My role is I lead worship music. I sing in the choir. You get them to start feeling like they're a part of the community because they have a valuable role, a valuable
Hmm.
asset. We need to incorporate that with kids too, right? We can't just come to this here. I want to stuff as many marshmallows as I can in my mouth and say chubby bunny every time. But you can't do that. Okay, it's funny, cool. It's like, well, if Jesus, you can tie it back into like scriptures, sure, whatever, have fun. But you really gotta give them connections to what they're doing. Like, all right, well, we're gonna learn about how to be an usher this week. Who wants to try to be an usher this Sunday? Give them
Hmm.
roles. Who wants to? We're gonna learn about what communion is. Let's learn about how we serve communion, what the attitude is, how we do it. Who wants to serve this week? Like, really get them involved and stuff, and they'll be like, "Oh, I'm a part of this church." Right? We just let them. The things we can't do is we can't take them out away from everybody every time they're in the building. You can't be
Hmm.
like, "Well, we have youth Sunday school. We have youth service during actual service where we take them away from the sermon. We have youth areas for them to sit so they're not distracting the adults. We have this space that's soundproof so they can't make noise." Like we can't separate them because they're gonna not feel like a part of the whole collection of the church.
Mm.
And I feel like that's where a lot of churches fall flat. This is like, yeah, we want, there's a really good book. Uh, my professor would be glad that I'm talking about Joyce St. Mercer right now. There's a really good book by Joyce St. Mercer called Welcoming Children that talks about this kind of stuff. Recommend it enthusiastically. Like, it is such a good book. And she's like, okay, so you might have a moment where there's a child in the service. There's a baby crying in the middle of the sermon. Is that distracting you? Some people will say yes. Sure. Okay, it's distracting me. Why are you letting that distract you? They're as entitled as you are to sit in that seat and listen to this sermon. Why does their noise distract you? You should be focused on your faith. Big things to think about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let me know I want to hear your thoughts about what I've said. So I'm gonna stop talking.
I mean, I don't know. Like, I mean, I completely agree with you that we need to get him more involved. Because like I believe that we should. And some people will like want to put me on a stake on this. Is I believe we should have youth in the pulpit.
Yep.
Um, I'm
Agreed.
not saying that they got to preach the whole sermon. I'm just saying, have them do like a small little tiny thing or, even read the scripture. I mean, reading the scripture is not that hard. I mean, even though I hate doing it because I'll screw up and I'll be like, oh. But I think it's just because I'm a perfectionist on that. But um, yeah, it's, I mean, I'm always that kind of person that when like there's a baby crying or when someone's loud during the sermon, I'm always gonna look at them and be like, but I'm not gonna like get up and be like, "Hey, you need to take your baby out" or whatever. Like, no, but I mean, I'm still gonna look at him because like I have a short attention span and I'm like, just like looking right at him. But I mean, if they still get that chance to sit there. I mean, I think the same thing. Have you ever had someone come in during the middle of church,
Yep.
like they got
All the
there
time.
late
All the
and
time.
they
Every
come in
Sunday.
during the middle of church, and I'm like, everybody looks at them, but then I'm like, you're gonna look at them for like 5 seconds, and you're gonna be like, okay, they're here. That's the way it should be with any kind of interruption in church. It should be like, okay, it happened, 5 seconds. You can take your 5 seconds to look at it and be like, ugh, and then be like, okay, we're back, we're back.
Mm.
So that way everybody gets their chance. I mean, because I'm not one of those people that says you should let a baby cry the whole time. I mean, what our church did, and this is a good thing, is they would pump the sound of like the sermon into a different room, and if someone's baby was crying, they could go to that different room with their baby, get them to stop crying while the sermon was still being pumped into that room, so they could still listen. And so, like, you give them those kind of options and stuff like that. But I think to bring us back to youth is like I completely agree with you. You need to have, teach them what it is to be a Christian. I think that's why we have so many people that like, as you said, when they get to the end of, when they're like 20, 25, they're like, oh, well, I don't need this anymore. I wasn't taught anything. I was just barely taught anything. And I think it's because we've gotten so much in the going through the motions of church where we just show up, don't make anything out of it, and then, you know, come home. My pastor says this all the time. Coming to church is a journey. You're supposed to come in there and you're supposed to know that you've started something, and that every time you come to church, you're completing another objective on your journey, as I would say.
Yeah, there's a lot with like how this could work, and I, I have a lot of thoughts, and it'd be so easy just to be like, yeah, here's a solution. But there's not a one size fit all solution, and it's gonna be different, right? You're gonna have to try different things, and the biggest struggle you're gonna have with like the biggest struggle with youth ministry is adults.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yep.
not youth, it's adults. That's the crazy part, because like you are so reliant on that adult showing up for that kid to bring them to these events. One, but two, make sure they're getting there and actually prioritizing in their life. And three, to invest in what happened when they were not together. Right?
Mm.
I you learn so much. I can teach you a lot. I can teach you a lot about religion as a youth. I can teach you a lot. But it's not going to matter if you're not going to a place that's going to reinforce it, or going to a place that allows you to question it. Like, if you are
Mhm.
not allowed to express your faith, it really hurts. It really hurts new followers and new believers, especially young ones. Because they're like, oh, well, my mom said this is bad and I don't need to talk about this to anyone but you. And then they put that in their mind. It may not be the front of their mind, but it's always on that back burner. It's like, yeah, I shouldn't be talking about Christianity. It's not, mom didn't like that. So it's not right. Right. And we're so influenced by our parents and our households that if they're not connected to it, our kids will not be connected to it either, no matter how hard we
Exactly.
try. So it's a full cycle of like we have to get everybody to buy into the Christianity thing and be on the same page, and then for like help parents, help families learn how to talk about these things with their kids. Like have youth events where parents come and like maybe you're with a different adult that's not your parent and that you have a
Mhm.
conversation with another kid just to see the
We
differences.
always had chaperones that would go on our
Yeah.
trips. That was like, someone you could talk to.
Yeah, like I always had conversations with my dad because we were kind of doing new religion stuff at the same time. But like I had a mentor in my church. I had the pastor of my church that wasn't my dad at the time. I had so many other people who were like curious about what I was thinking about things and really pushed me along. And I've said it many times, but it's a miracle that somebody like me in our generation is in a church. Like some the people who like raised me should like pat on the back. Like you did something to get somebody to be a Christian. We
Mhm.
can't all say that.
I think at the end of the day, my complete goal in youth ministry, and I guess this is probably yours too, is to make some kind of impact in someone's life.
Exactly.
Is to sometime later you can say, "Hey, that person inspired me to start my faith journey," or that person helped me when I was struggling. And I mean, as I've taught in school too, I mean it's kind of harder in school because you can't really talk about religion in school anymore. But um, you know, I want to be an imprint in someone's life, as I would say. I mean, I have people, which I'd like to talk about this on a podcast sometime. Um, remind
We
me
have
this
one.
later. Yeah, of people who have really, who have made imprints on your life. Because I have one that really made an imprint on my life, and he wasn't even my youth leader. He was just someone in my church who, um, took me in as like a grandpa or grandma. I mean, I have grandparents, but I considered this person, a grandparent of some sort, even though we weren't, connected with blood or anything like that. But they were just there for me so much that I was like, you know, I thought of them as my family. And I
Right.
guess that's what I want in youth ministry. I want our youth group to be, a family.
Right.
Did I
Yeah,
ace the interview?
there's like a I think I would hire you. But there's a lot of other things weighing on that too. Um yeah. I'm thinking about watching youth when they get to the point where they're like adults. It's like
hmm
I want to be invited to their wedding. Like, I want to
I
have
have a
that
youth
much of an
pastor
impact in
that
their
was
life.
like that.
Yeah. It's like I want to be invited to their wedding. I want to, hang out, be part of big events. I want them to come up to me in 20 years and be like, "Hey, all that stuff you did really helped me out. I would not be where I am without you." It's like that's what
hmm
I want to hear. Like if I get one of those,
Yeah,
I'll die
it'd make you
happy.
for life, right?
I'll die like I just die right there and be like, "Yep, I'm good. I did my job. Take me now."
Mhm.
We
Yeah, I
have
think
such
that's
a
both of our goals.
Yeah, we have such a powerful way to impact people. And I think why it's so important with youth is just their impressionability. Like it is the time in their life that they are learning. Think about education for a second. When do you go to school? You go to school like from like 5 to 18. That's
Mm-hmm.
that's public school, right? Like, you know, primary school stuff. Like
Mm-hmm.
you can continue going in your 20s. You can go back at any point in time, but like that is the sponge time period where you're really learning and picking up stuff. Like you have to capitalize on that. And I think where a lot of us don't capitalize, yeah, not making them feel like they're welcome. Like we
We
have to
say, "Wait till you
be.
get older." That's your favorite
Yeah,
phrase,
that's
right?
another one that makes me like you are the future of the church. No, they're part of the church now. They're in the building now, right? I that's just not there. We could do a whole episode on things that just, for the lack of a better word, grind
What
my
annoys
gears.
Matthew about the
What annoys
church? There
Matthew
we
about the
go.
church? Oh, dude, we do not have 5 hours to make a podcast episode. There's it's probably not even. It's probably like more like a day. Like there's a lot of stuff that annoys me. It's why I'm in it. Why I'm in the field. Like I want to make a difference. I want to do
Yeah.
something. So you need
I used
people
to
like
say that's
that.
why I wanted to go into music. I was that's the it used to be the reason I wanted to go into music because I was like, where I lived, I was like, man, the music here is terrible, and I was like, I want to go to school to make it better. And then when I got into school, I was like, this really is a stupid reason for me to go to school. But I still liked music. But then I was like, I came up with a different reason of why I was going to school for it. I was like, that first reason was not the reason I should have went to school for. But then I, changed my outlook on it, and I actually really liked, it helped me grow and stuff like that. But I I I feel the same way. I want to make a youth program that someone can be proud of.
Right.
Um, and that when kids look back, they're gonna be like, "Man, you should have been in my youth group. It was cool."
Yeah. Well, I watch. I think about. So I'm thinking about our youth groups, right?
Hmm.
I'm looking at the spectrum of everybody that I can think of that was in that youth group. I'm looking. I'm thinking through it real quick. As far as I know, I'm the only one who's still in church.
Oof.
That says something.
Yeah, that's not good.
Yeah, that really says something. I'm like, wow, I had this great experience, and it's mostly because like it's mostly because I took so this is where I'll give you the nod to like taking the week and going somewhere and having experience. Like a lot of that
Yeah.
was because I got involved with things that are outside of my church. Like there were a lot of churches where I was the only one my age. Like as my dad started moving around churches, like I was the only one my age, so I had to find other outlets, right? So I started doing things within the state, and like I found other youth groups. I found other people in the state that I could connect with, and we started doing youth stuff. Like we went to like all these different places and had events, and you start building those connections. Like, and I'm even like thinking about that now. It's like I have to do that with my church right now because I'm the like there's one or two other people that are my age in my church right now. So if I want to find like my colleagues and my peers, I have to go outside of the church. Not that
Hmm.
I'm gonna leave the church, but I have to go outside to find those people. And it's really welcoming those, giving those spaces to individuals. Like we can't be worried about them leaving. I think
Hmm.
that's one of the big things. It's like they're gonna leave, they're gonna leave, they're gonna leave. Don't You can't worry about them leaving. You have to worry about making an impact in their life. Because if they leave, okay, sure. Do they know
That's their
Christ?
choice.
Do they know Christ? That's what I care about.
Hmm.
And you're like, well, they're in our church. That's not the question I asked. Do they know Christ? Do they walk with Christ? You have to answer that question.
Pastors complain so much about church hoppers and stuff like that, and people in church complain about that too. You know, I was like that when I was a little younger, but I guess I got that from my parents probably. But you know, I'm at the point where like it's not a big deal anymore. If you want to go where you want to go, it's not a big deal. We've talked about it in the past podcast. We're just happy that you go to a church. That's my opinion. I'm just happy you go to a church.
I'm
But
happy you're choosing to spend your time going to a church and not just
yeah,
going because it's, I love using this phrase, checking off the bucket list. They're checking off your
yeah,
list of things to do for the week. Like,
yep.
I like that you're going because you are actively choosing to go, right?
Hmm.
That's what I like. Because I remember, this story time. I remember when I was in seminary and I was like, cool, I'm learning about all this Christian stuff. I don't need to go to church because I'm learning about
Oh,
it. I didn't go to church my first semester in seminary at all. I even watched my dad's sermons online because they were there. Some of them, okay,
you're the
occasionally.
problem. You're the
Occasionally I was there.
problem.
Yeah, well, you're talking about that time where people leave, right? That was, I'm like, well, cool. I'm doing all this stuff, I don't want to go. I didn't know anybody, so that was part of the issues. Like, I didn't know anybody at the church, and the one I went to, they were like, oh, one person talked to me, and I didn't make that connection with them, so I didn't go back, right?
Hmm.
Um, I'm trying to remember where I was going with this. But yeah, you do need to take that time to think about it, right? Because I got out of the church for 5, 6 months. It took
Hmm.
somebody inviting me to go to their church. Eventually, it was a job, actually. So I got an internship at a church to really go, oh, I miss this. I really
Yeah.
miss this. Like, because I moved to a different place. I had no community. In a
Hmm.
church, if you have the space to make somebody, an outsider, into a community and allow them to experience your community and get them a part of it, you know, yeah, that invitation never was given. Probably wouldn't even be close to the field I definitely would not be living the life I am now. Like, pretty much everything has come from that in the last couple of years. So that can make a big difference, not only in my faith, but it made a big difference in my life too.
Hmm.
That's the story.
Well, so how can we wrap up this youth conversation? What is like a final thing we can say?
Well, did we ever get to the
Um,
second question fully?
yeah, we did.
You think you covered it
We
pretty
did.
well? Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it looks great. I mean, I think we if me and Matthew were the only people running youth programs, you know, uh, we would be great right now.
Yeah.
But I think that the best way we can look at it is like we've said, you got to have room to change. I'm not saying you got to change your core beliefs. You got to change your outlook on how you are bringing people in.
Right.
If it's gotta be you change the music that you play at your church, you don't have to change it that much. You just gotta add one song and they'll be happy. Trust me.
Mm-hmm. Or even add a
So
thing after service where it's like, hey, we're gonna have a jam session,
exactly.
temporary music. Come watch. They might just come to that. Sure, whatever works. Yeah, there. You get them in the building. Remember it's pickleball.
Yeah,
You get them
we gotta
there.
bring back pickleball.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm becoming obsessed with it. So if there's anybody in the comments who's obsessed with pickleball, hit me up.
Yeah, we'll play.
I'll school you. I'll dink. We'll dink together.
Mm.
You don't even know what the heck that means.
I have no idea.
But yeah, I think there is a positive outlook on youth. I think we can all change and we can all uh, help grow.
Yeah.
We all like to say that Christianity is one generation away from death, but it's not if you do something about it.
No, it's dead now. Honestly,
Okay,
that's
don't
kind
take
of,
Matthew's outlook.
don't take
Bad
my
outlook.
negativity. Yeah.
Your negativity.
I mean, it
But
works for me because in my mind I go, oh, it's dead now. I want to fix that. So that
you're
works
gonna
for you.
rebirth it.
Go for it. Yeah, I'm gonna pick. I'm gonna be the reason it's alive again. That's what I want to do. Yeah, I would say. So what does look? I'm gonna just look at this question because I don't think I've fully answered it. But if I'm gonna take one last stab at it, what is youth ministry and how does it look now? Um, you're like, oh, it looks hopeful. And I'm like, yeah, I see that now. Because my original thought of that question is like, oh, I'm like over here rubbing my head, like, please don't. Just take it away from me. Like, it's not good. But you're like, oh, it looks hopeful. And I'm like, thinking about, yeah, this is why we have conversations, by the way. It's like, yeah, it can be hopeful because if you see people who are motivated and enthusiastic about doing something, it has a very positive outlook. If you were like me and looking at how it's how it's always been done. I hate that phrase. If you're looking at how it's
That's
always
the
been
way
done,
we've always done it.
then I have no hope. But if you're like trying new things, if you're doing something different, if you're actively thinking about what you're doing, and not just like, yeah, Johnny does a good job leading the youth. They aren't in drugs and stuff. They aren't like getting run over by cars and stuff. We're good. Like, they're taken care of. They got their juice boxes. They got their apple crisp. It's like, no, that's not what I want to see. I want to see youth like. I like what you said. Honestly, the youth preaching servant. I want to see youth running the church. I want them in charge.
In
Like that's one of the
charge.
that's one of the things like I talked with my confirmants about this past cycle. It's like, you become a member of the church when you finish this, right? You can be on the board. You can be on our executive board. You should be on our executive. Do it.
That's not the way we've done it, though.
You can run a committee. You can be on a committee. You can really do what you want to make this your church. Do it.
Mm-hmm.
I will help you do it.
Well, see, that's a big point right there. We need more people that will say, "I will help
I will
you."
help you.
Yes. I think that would be my final thing on youth is like, I did a little web series with our district, and it was where we would talk with youth and stuff like that, and the last thing they said was they just want a space where they can have people to talk to and have people who will support them. And so I think that the best thing we can do is support them.
Right.
And that's really easy to say, but it's very hard to do.
Yeah.
It's very hard to do because people won't do it.
Yeah. I remember
And
so the first episode we did, the first two episodes we were in person, right? I remember
Mhm.
that week because we were doing confirmation stuff and I took you to go pick up plants because we were gonna do a planning thing the day you left. And I'm like, I need my youth is doing this project. They need somebody to go do this. I'm gonna take my time to go do this because somebody has to do it. Somebody has to get these plants so they can plant them. We really gotta take that step to be like, yeah, I'm gonna help you. I'm gonna help you. Like that project was thrown together in a week and a half. A large scale planting, putting down wood chips on a path. Like that took a week and a half, and without the motivation of people beyond the youth who was running that program, it would have just died. Like we just told the youth, yeah, that's good, do it. Would never have been done. But the fact that there's
Mhm.
people who actually step into that role and be like, I want to help you. What do you need? Okay, you need me to go get plants. Sure. You need me to go get wood chips. Sure. You need me to go get soil. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because we went and got soil. We went and got plants. We did the whole thing. And we're
Let's
like,
not even
here you
talk about
go.
soil.
Here we go. Have fun. You have to really be invested in what they're doing, right? Because one
Mhm.
person having an idea is great. One person leading a group doing an idea, that's what gets it done.
So I said this in my last interview. I said I can't do it all by myself.
That's why you didn't get hired.
And
I'm joking.
well, no. And I literally thought that. I thought, I was too honest. I thought, well, maybe I wasn't supposed to be that honest. Maybe I should have said, "Oh yeah, I'll be fine." No, I mean, I want to be that honest, and I truly believe that. I don't think it is the sole purpose of a youth pastor to be there by themselves and do everything, because then you're not really doing what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to be the leader of a community of adults
Mhm.
that want to grow their youth program.
Right.
And so that's probably what I'll say when I interview again for another youth pastor job. But, you know, that's just me
Yeah.
being honest about the only way youth ministry is going to grow is if we do it together.
Right. Yeah. I think the way I would rephrase that is like, I like what you say. What you said again at the interview. I can't do this by
I
myself. Is
said
that what you said?
I can't do this for myself.
I
Yeah.
can't do this by myself because if I do this by myself, it influences and impacts nobody, and you're just running through the motions with these kids. You're not actually taking the time to invest in them. They need a group of people to invest in them, not just me. I can invest in them all I want. Without the
Hmm.
church's backing of that, it's not going to work. There's actually I want to say it's cognitive psychology about youth growing up. Youth tend to need 5 people in a church. 5 people that take an interest in them, that actively want to walk with them, to make them really feel connected to that community. Do you have 5 people that are willing to walk with your youth? At least 5 people. You need more than that, honestly. But five
Hmm.
minimum. Like, do you have those people in your church? If you don't have that, I, I'll be there to run your daycare service, but they're not going to grow into mature Christians.
Hmm.
And I'm gonna have to fight you. That's why I'm like, adults are the issue with youth ministry. Like, you really gotta get adults. You gotta get adults. You can't get youth. You gotta get adults.
Hmm. Well, I
Yeah.
think we've talked about it pretty well. I think
I can
we've.
keep going, but I'm gonna let you wrap up. So have fun. You want to know more? Message me in the comments. I'll give you a 100-page thesis that I wrote about it.
Yeah, he can send it to you. I would, we've said, youth ministry is not dead. It has its potential, just like the church. It has its potential. Um,
It's what you do
it'll
with
take.
it that matters.
I was gonna say it'll take you guys. It'll take us, and it'll take you guys to help it grow.
Amen.
Um,
Amen.
yeah.
And that felt
Any
very
final
sermony.
any final things you want to say
Um,
besides like, subscribe, all that junk?
and that stuff. But yeah, honestly, if you have like, if you want to talk more about this, like, my field, please, let me know. I am down to have a conversation about it. Because I love this topic. I love youth ministry. I think it's important. I think it's the most vital ministry we do in the church. Um, Not to say the other stuff isn't worthwhile, but you don't have the church if you don't constantly educate. So we need to really include that. And yeah, I'm interested in your thoughts. So yeah, answer those questions. What does youth ministry look like to you? And what would you want to see it? What would you want to see happen to make it evolve into the next thing it's supposed to be?
Yeah. So some final things. Some final things.
I'll take a
Uh,
yeah.
we might be having some guests on some some upcoming episodes. We've talked about it, and we talked about it in the past that we have, you know, thought about it, but
Right.
it might really come to fruition right now because we've been talking to some people. I might have my cousin on the podcast. I don't know yet. I haven't even asked him, so we'll see. And then, I almost brought my dad on tonight, but he wasn't ready,
Mm.
for our recording. But
I wasn't ready for your dad either, but you know,
yeah, I mean, my dad's pretty cool. So,
yeah, he's pretty
but
cool.
probably what we'll, and tell us in the comments what you think. But probably what we're gonna do with him is, my dad's a music minister, so we were going to talk about music and stuff like that. We've already talked about it a little bit. They're all of our 10 episodes, our big 10, episodes. And so I think it'll be cool to talk about music with him. And Another comment. We may not do this yet, but I want to hear what you guys have to say. Do you want us guys, us, me and Matthew, uh,
Matthew and
or
I.
Matthew and I, sorry,
There you
Matthew
go.
and I,
Thank you.
sorry, bad English, I'm terrible at it. Do you
I'm good
want
at
us to do some face cam stuff sometime soon?
my vote's
I
no.
know we're some we like, getting in our t-shirts and, just sitting here talking with you guys, but I know some people would like to see our faces and stuff like that. And if we did do some guests, it'd be cool to have their faces on there too. But that's my question to you. If you would like that to
Mm,
happen, just let us know in the comments.
yeah. And
We'll try
obviously,
to work
like,
something out.
yeah, obviously, like with our guest, we are trying to get their for lack of better terms, field of expertise when it comes to religion. So what they're really interested in. I think Luke and I are just pretty in it, so we're gonna jump on whatever topic it is. But yeah,
Hmm.
there's some opportunities for some really good dialogue with some other topics that we normally wouldn't discuss. A lot of what we've come up with, honestly, I give credit to Luke because a lot of it's his ideas. I'm just like, yeah, that sounds fun this week because I don't really know what to talk about because there's so many things I could talk about. That's the difference. And I
Most of
think
it I
you
come
kind of
up
feel the same
with the
way.
week.
Yeah, you're like, yeah, let's just do this today. I'm like, all right, sounds good. But yeah, we're really gonna try to focus on what our guest would want to talk about specifically. Hopefully, that leads to a very fruitful. I don't think it would. Let me say this in the correct English because if I say double negative, it doesn't mean anything. I think it would be nice for them to feel comfortable in what they're talking about, and also it would allow them to have kind of the space of ease coming in rather than us bombarding them with random questions and those kinds of things. It would allow them to maybe like, oh, this is what I'm interested in. Let's do some information about it, and we definitely need to plan those out because we can't record a couple days before it comes out with them. But yeah, I know I've been kind of the reason we haven't had any guests. I kind of was like, Luke, we need to really establish me and you first. Although you've been saying it's 10 episodes, you should know us pretty well by
The
now.
big
So
1-0.
hopefully, if you want us to do, if you don't want us to guest, let us know that too.
You just want to, keep talking with us,
Yeah, shoot the breeze, man. And we let us know in the comments, and of course, yeah, anything we've talked about. I always like if you've latched on to something, like if we said a phrase or something, you can literally just leave that phrase. I'm interested in say like, oh, that thing I said, nugget of wisdom. I'm gonna put it on a post on social media and be like, I said this fun thing, and quote me.
And share our stuff. I
Yeah,
like when people
please.
are sharing it. Um, it's so easy on Facebook to do it. All you have to do is click share,
Share.
and then it's on YouTube. You just click the share on YouTube, and it goes right to your Facebook. It's that easy.
Right.
I do it every time an episode comes out. So you know,
And I share Luke's
and
post. So
yeah. So like, share, do all that
mm,
stuff. It's so easy.
yeah, it's very
Um,
similar to like what we're talking about now. It's like remember that thing I said about you need to make a connection with somebody. We can post this as much as we want, but like if you really like it, like hey, I'm listening to this podcast. Share.
hmm.
Way better than one of us going, hey, listen to our podcast. Way better.
Yeah, because
So do
eventually
that.
people are gonna be
It's
like,
great.
"Oh man, they've shared their podcast way too many times."
Feels like that sometimes. Yeah. All right, take us away, sir.
So remember, it's the big 1-0 today. So big celebration. If I had the little, you know, air horn button, I would do
I
it.
got you. It's not gonna
Oh, it didn't.
pop up in the sound,
Dang
but
it!
I'm pressing it.
Wah, 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 wah,
Hold on, I might be able to
wah,
get it.
wah. Nope.
Hopefully, you heard some of that.
But it was yeah, 1-0. But keep us going to 20. That's what I'm gonna say for our little ending. We love doing this and we love sharing it. Um, so make it something that you can use for yourself. We just don't want it to be just for us. We want it to be for you guys. So on that note, we'll see you later.